and create a space where we can all learn from one another and start to create a place of healing rather than a place where we're experiencing a lot of hate like we have in the past.
By doing this work, I have been the target for 3 years nonstop of egregious online harassment in all levels. I think it's important to recognize that harassment is, as someone had mentioned, it's not just what is legal and illegal, right? Harassment is threats of violence, but it's also the day-to-day grind of you're a liar, you suck, you know, making all of these hate videos to attack us on a regular basis, and the mobs that come from those hate videos, etc.
Look, I went to Oberlin College, which was the Berkeley of the Midwest, back in the early 1990s, and all of this grievance politics, multiculturalism, the extremes of progressive identity politics was really...
Everything is racist, everything is homophobic, and you have to point it all out.
Somehow women aren't up in arms. They aren't organizing protests and boycotts and online campaigns.
Starting to brew. It's been a cauldron. And now what do we have? You know, fast forward to 2015. It's the coddling of the American mindless. Listen to that woman. She thinks that her job, that her whole task and mission on an institution of higher learning is to be protected from speech that harms her ego. What is this? Whatever happened to the mission of inculcating knowledge and truly exposing people to the diversity of intellectual ideas and thought?
Who allows this rock-solid hate crime hoax to be perpetuated and go forward? Is it the media?
It certainly is, of course, because that's part of their prefab narrative. Right? There's a hegemon, what are the words they use? A hegemony of patriarchal racism that's infesting institutional racism. Nothing has changed since slavery. These people have no sense of appreciation for just how good they have it in this country.
On a similar debate at Yale, where administrators are trying to convince angry young people at Yale that the exchange of ideas, offensive or not, is the foundation of higher learning. Not to mention the First Amendment. While at the University of Missouri, where students were told this week to call campus police if they heard offensive speech or insulting speech, the vice president of the student body, the vice president, is now making the case that citing the Bill of Rights is really no excuse for infringing on her safe space.
I personally am tired of hearing that First Amendment rights protect students when they're creating a hostile and unsafe learning environment for myself and for other students here. I think that it's important for us to create that distinction and create a space where we can all learn from one another and start to create a place of healing rather than a place where we're experiencing a lot of hate like we have in the past.
Well, these are the same people who claim they're seeking diversity. The last thing many of these students want is real diversity, diversity of ideas. They may want superficial diversity of gender, superficial diversity of color, but they don't want diversity of ideas. We're seeing a curtain of McCarthyism descend over many college campuses. You know, I don't want to make analogies to the 1930s, but we have to remember that it was the students at universities who first started burning books during the Nazi regime. And these students are book burners. They don't want to hear diverse views on college campuses. When I went to speak at Johns Hopkins University, there were protests. It was said that because I won't acknowledge that Israel commits crimes against the Palestinians, I am, quote, harassing students and violating the ethical standards of Johns Hopkins University. By expressing my opinion, I'm harassing students. This has become a very serious problem, not only in American universities, but in universities around the world as well. And it is influencing and having a terrible impact on the education of students.
You have spent your life in a courtroom and on college campuses, on one in particular, and it is an elite institution. When you go to college, you know, as my 100-year-old Nana would say, at least it was when I went to school, you go and you express your freedom and you find it's young adulthood and you want to do all sorts of things and you don't want anybody getting all up in your business. But now they're demanding that the school get all up in everybody's business, and the freedom has to stop when it comes to words.
No, it's the worst kind of hypocrisy. They want complete freedom over their sex lives, over their personal lives, over the use of drugs. But they want mommy and daddy, dean and president to please give them a safe place, protect them from ideas that may be insensitive and maybe will make them think. But it's a double standard. Look at what's happening at Hunter University, City University of New York. Students from the Students for Justice for Palestine have issued a petition saying Zionist administrators are causing high tuition in the school. Zionist administrators, you know what they mean by Zionists? They mean Jews. Blatant anti-Semitism. Nobody says a word. When I spoke at Johns Hopkins University, some of the protesting students, the same students who were talking about safe places, painted a Hitler mustache on my posters. No concern about that. It's an absolute double standard. It is free speech for me, but not for thee, and universities should not tolerate this kind of hypocrisy, double standard, and college administrators have to start treating students as adults and talking back to them.
Where, as somebody who's been in academia, where is the spine of these administrators?
They're all afraid. They're all afraid. After Larry Summers got fired from Harvard, after the president of Missouri gets fired, college administrators don't want to have to confront students. Well, if you're going to be a college administrator or a professor, if you have tenure, you have to speak back to the students. You have to call these things what they are. Double standard, hypocrisy, bigotry, McCarthyism, and the fog of fascism is descending quickly over many American universities. We have to fight back against these students.
The duty to educate doesn't walk out the door just because things get tense and uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
Professor Dershowitz, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Joining me now with more, Peggy Noonan, Wall Street Journal columnist, former presidential speechwriter, and author of the new book, The Time of Our Lives. And you've been writing in the book, which I've read, The Time of Our Lives. We have some of your columns where you talk about what's been happening to the little cupcakes on the college campuses.
Yes.
And not just any college campus, but Yale, Peggy. At Yale, we're seeing this.
Yes, at great universities, the kind of school that people are very lucky to be at. They are not really the oppressed, if you look at it a certain way.
Right.
They are getting a wonderful education. They are in the heart of the American elite. They are going to go on to elite lives. Look, I agree with everything Alan just said. This is a really important thing that's happening on the campuses now. I'm very glad that slowly but surely over the past few months and years it has been exposed. This is a censorship movement. It is a movement to censor free speech by people who don't seem to know even what the First Amendment is. I'm surprised they're at Yale and Mizzou because it doesn't seem they've been educated that well about the First Amendment. But it is a progressive sort of movement that is dangerous because once they control free speech and what can be said, they get to be the arbiters of what can be said.
That's right, of everybody's speech.
Yeah.
You know, I was reading a review just yesterday, actually, of your book by Peter Berkowitz, and who loved the book. And he was talking about your writing and how you have repeatedly criticized the self-esteem movement, which substitutes flattery of ego for the cultivation of character. Is that what we are seeing here? The cupcakes get to school and they think, I am God's gift. And I just heard someone say something that is unpleasant.
Yes, I know. It is an odd thing. You have to wonder about what they were taught, how they were in a way brought up the past 20 years so that they think the highest value for them is a feeling, quote unquote, of personal safety. And so many things violate that feeling of personal safety, such as great literature, stories of history that contain horrifying facts, information. They all claim to be so tender and so intimidated by the facts of life, but when you see them up close at these demonstrations, they seem not intimidated, they seem like intimidators. They are muscling people, as that famous Mizzou journalism teacher said.
Literally, that's what she was saying.
They are using muscle.
Again, let me offer their point of view, which is, why should I have to sit at my college campus and pay all this money to obtain an education and have to listen to somebody say something that is racially offensive or a sexist remark?
Well, I actually don't think our great universities are full of teachers saying racist and sexist things, but it is true that if you study great literature, certainly plenty of the great literature of the West, Shakespeare has violence, he has sexism, if you want to look at it that way. Great literature does have these things. But
outside of literature, you've lived this thing called life.
Yeah.
Has that ever happened to you? Has life ever delivered that your way?
Yeah. This is a funny thing. They have an expectation that they will be protected from life. I don't know where that expectation came from. as your nana probably used to say,
right.
nobody protected me.
Right.
I mean, in free societies, there are no safe places. In an area like a great academy where people are actually honestly discussing ideas, there is no, quote, safety.
That's right.
But there can be learning, advancement. You can learn courage. You can learn how to be a strong person.
That's
you
right.
cannot hide from the world, and you should not bully people.
I was at an event in Westchester today, St. Vincent's Hospital, great cause, and said to the ladies there that, you know, back in my day, you know, now these students, you can't offend them, you can't insult them. Growing up in my house, my mother was the one doing the offense. She was the one insulting me. It worked out okay. I got a thick skin. Later in life, when some prominent people would throw insults my way, I was able to handle it all right.
Yes, you had to handle it.
I didn't crumble and say, where's my safe space?
Also,
Peggy?
these young ones don't seem to know that we adults experience so much of life and our culture as constant microaggressions and constant triggering events.
And we're still okay.
But, you know, I have survived, you have survived, we all do.
You have a glass of wine at the end of the day, you're good to go. I gotta go. Peggy, it's great to see you. Time of our lives. Check it out.